All right, welcome everyone to the Red, White, and Matt Show with Kenny. This is episode 5. For today's topics, we got a couple of short stories to start you guys out with. First thing we're going to be discussing is the Texas voter turnout. Basically, there's been already 4 million Texans that have voted, which is crushing any other state in terms of early voter turnout. And this is actually already 50% of the voter turnout that there was in 2016. So pretty insane. And one of the other things to note is they did have a high registration rate in the Houston area and Austin area. So definitely something to keep in mind, something we actually kind of discussed in our last podcast. Let's see. So let's go on to the next one, short story. We have so the debate is coming up on Thursday at 9 p.m. That's going to be on different channels, but it's going to be hosted by a NBC broadcaster or NBC spokesperson. And this time, actually, an update to the debates, and assuming it takes place, I think it will this time. There's actually going to be a mute button, so if they go over the 2-minute mark, they could be muted. So one positive note also for our next story, we actually have credit scores going up during the COVID crisis, which that's pretty interesting. But I think it's a good positive out of it. However, we don't know what the long-term effects are. So although it might look good right now, maybe later on, not so much the case. And that pretty much sums up all of our short stories for today. We're going to now move on to our news topics. All right. Hopefully you guys like our new soundboard we got going. But for our first news topic, we're actually going to discuss the stimulus check. And I guess, Kenny, what do you think about this whole second stimulus check and what's been going on with it?
You know, this is going to go back to what I was talking about last time is like, okay, they knew, the government per se, knew that the last stimulus and all the stuff it entailed was going to end on, I think it was October 1st or so. And what are we looking at now? Almost November. And they're now just fighting over whether or not they're even going to pass one. And I think they have one. Personally, I think they have one. Because I think Nancy Pelosi pulled a power move yesterday when she came out and gave the president 48 hours to sign a bill, right? That tells me that she has a bill that she does not mind passing, and she's putting the ball in Trump's court to force him to pass it. So the way I see it is they're basically, they have a bill. They have one, at least one side wouldn't mind passing. And now they're just trying to position themselves to who benefits and who gets the credit and who's getting, the final ledger on who's getting what for kind of money.
Yeah. Now,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think? I think personally that this has been purely political. It's taken way too long, I would say. But I think it's unlikely. I think this is going to happen before the election. I would say probably even after the election. I think it's probably going to depend on who wins the election. And I definitely think if Biden wins, that they'll probably pass one probably as soon as he gets in office. What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to determine on what's in this bill. Okay, like if there's something for everybody in that bill, I think it's in everybody's best interest for who's in office right now to get it passed as quickly as possible. Because like I said, right now we have a situation where we have millions of people that are kind of in limbo. We got, places like Boeing saying that they're going to start laying off like 20,000 employees if they don't start getting some stimulus money, right? Which I think is kind of BS that they're holding the federal government hostage on this kind of an issue. But I understand, they're losing like $1 million a day in flights. I mean, they got to do something. And, if it's really like not enough, like it's an obvious just to kick the can down the road for a couple of weeks kind of issue, I don't think it's in anybody's best interest sitting in office to slap their name on that bill and say, okay, they're not gonna want to claim that they passed that piece of garbage, right? Versus if it's, halfway decent, and things that everybody would be proud of, they'd want to get that passed pretty quick. So the way I see it is, okay, if it's a bill that everybody got the fluff that they wanted in it, and they have a win to take back to their constituents right before the election, I think we're going to see that thing get passed. If it's another half measure, okay, let me backtrack just a little bit. Okay, so the stimulus package that Trump actually passed a couple of weeks ago was pretty much the same bill that was sitting, I believe, on the Senate's desk, right? It's something they wanted to pass. I don't think they could have passed it and gotten away with it with their constituents. So I think Donald Trump came and took that bill, passed it, and then nobody, in the House and Senate did anything about it because technically it was illegal. I mean, the president really doesn't have that power authority, but they didn't say anything about it because the Democrats get to go back and say, hey, you know what, he did it, it was done illegally, he shouldn't have done it, it should have had these other issues in it. And the Trump administration gets to come in and say, well, you wouldn't pass anything, so I took matters into my own hands. So both sides really got to win on that.
Yeah,
and in the meantime,
I think it's ridiculous that there's actually Republicans out there that literally don't even think we need a stimulus package at all. Like, they're like, no, we're good. And I'm like, whoa, what about some of the unemployment here, my guys? Like, it's a little, that's on the harsh side, I would say.
Here's my thing on it. I don't like the idea of a stimulus package, right? I think free market should be allowed, but they've told people that they got to sit at home and twiddle their thumbs. And you have all these small businesses. I think half of all small businesses that shut down during the whole, 2 weeks that we were told 2 weeks, and now we'll be on month 4, are sitting at home because they either can't afford to reopen, or they can't, or they're in a area where it's just still technically under semi-lockdown. They call it semi-lockdown, but if you own a small family restaurant and you can only fit 20% of the people or 50% of the people in there, you're not making money. So what's the point of opening? So they have put the American people into the position where they have to have a stimulus package. Right. Does that make sense? Because they're not allowing free market. Go ahead.
It's the government got involved. So now it's the government trying to fix things. They shut down too much, and now here we are. Oh, hold on. I'm going to actually have to make up for this again. Not only did the government lose money, but now they're going to give you extra money because they screwed everything up too bad. If you ask me, we went too far in terms of shutting down. It was too radical, I think. Sure, cases are high, but it's the United States. I blame our culture, I feel like, on a lot of this. Some people just, they don't really care that much. Some people, do it in the name of freedom or whatever it may be, but we're just more radical, I would say, definitely comparing us to European nations. So.
Okay, so the next article you have is over the whole COVID situation, right? Because I'm gonna go into that.
No. If it's not. We're gonna switch it up. We're gonna switch gears here.
Okay, then
we're gonna go into a deeper COVID topic probably in a couple videos from now.
Okay, but let me say this then. Like who in their right mind didn't think that the second that everybody went into lockdown, the numbers were going to go down, right? And the second you let everybody back to work without a viable treatment or vaccine, it was going to skyrocket again, right? So they've gotten everybody to go into lockdown. Okay, so the lockdowns didn't make sense from a perspective of you're flattening the curve for what at some point, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're trying to push off a viable vaccine or treatment until you know more. And you're trying to slow the spread of people that's going into hospitals. That's really not going to work over 2 weeks. I mean, you're pushing the inevitable off. That's all you're doing. And at some point, and we would like to say, well, it's people who won't wear masks. Well, what if I told you the masks don't work the way people think they do? And maybe some of the people should have read some of the white papers on, okay, why do we have a 6-foot distance? Why not 12? Why not 13? Where did we come up with this 6-foot rule? Okay, so this individual that they had in a hospital bed was stationary. They weren't going anywhere, and this virus was still traveling. I said, if memory serves me, the estimate was 9 to 12 feet. So they figured if they put a mask on that person, the virus particles wouldn't be traveling out as fast as a person just straight breathing. And that's how we came up with the 6-foot rule, right? But how long does it take for those virus particles to drop out of the air? Dr. Fauci said 30 minutes. Last I checked, that was the definition of airborne. And you had Kamala Harris on the debate stage like 2 weeks ago saying that the administration knew it was airborne and didn't tell anybody. Well, the evidence has been out there, so the way we're looking at it is not effective. It's really not effective. And if people aren't changing out their PPE, it's again not effective. You're only staving off the inevitable. At a certain point, everybody's going to get it. So to me, it was about limiting panic. It had nothing to do with health and safety. It was about limiting panic. And now they want to yell at the people who don't want to wear the mask. And don't get me wrong, if I go into a private company and they request I wear a mask, I wear a mask. It's not a big deal, because for me, it's about that personal. It's about what's the word? It's about property rights, right? If the company says they want me to wear it, I wear it because I want to do business with them. Simple as that. It takes 30 seconds, put it on, keep going. But we have failed to look at, okay, the scientific evidence behind it is not real sound from my understanding of how the science works. And it's like, so to me, it was a stall tactic, and it was a way to keep the American people comfortable that they were actually doing something to help. And if you look at what's been going on since then, everything's been about pushing off the inevitable. Have we done it? To a point, yeah. And maybe we found out in that time that maybe the virus isn't as dangerous as they originally led us to believe, right? And and that goes back to another issue, back to the very start of this, where how hard was it for the government to just come out and say, we have this new novel virus out, we're not sure how dangerous it is. Until we find out more, here's a few things that people can do. Wash your hands, use hand sanitizer once in a while, help put a mask on just in case if you're breathing, it doesn't go out everywhere. Boom. How hard was that? So, and I know we can go down that rabbit hole, but at the same, getting back to the original topic, right? They have put the American people in a position where they have to have a stimulus package, and now they're fighting over how much chicken feed they give us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And now we're all sitting at home. How many people are sitting at home who are running down on their unemployment benefits and are going to be homeless here in the next couple of weeks? And that doesn't even tie into what's going to happen for Christmas, right? If they don't pass a bill here in the next week or two, even if they pass a bill, how fast are they going to get those checks out, right?
Yeah.
If it don't happen 2 weeks before Christmas, the whole Christmas industry, which is like 20% or 30% of all retail sales, might as well just flush that down the drain. So
yeah. So I was gonna say, I remember the original purpose of the whole shutdown or lockdown was supposed to be because, the hospitals would be overwhelmed, and we're gonna have clinics out in the football fields and stadiums and everything. But then it came, and it was really a big overreaction. Places like New York, maybe sure, these really big metropolitan places, but it's a huge overreaction. But let's move on to the next topic. We have our next news item. That was intense. All right, so yeah, we're gonna pull up this article here and show you guys. All right, so this is a Washington Post article. A pretty ridiculous article at that. But as you can see, this article is titled, "When It Comes to Suppression of Black Votes, It's the 19th Century All Over Again." Very interesting title, but if you go on to read it, do you recall, Kenny, what happened in the 19th century in America? I would say there was a big war fought at the end of that. Don't you recall there?
Yeah, it wasn't the 19th century. We're talking about Civil War, right?
Right, exactly. So
yeah,
clearly,
the first one.
Clearly, black votes, the suppression then is actually equivalent to 2020. I don't know if you know that, but
yeah.
We were just finishing a civil war. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Just finished it.
So this kind of goes back to an issue I wanted to get into on the last subject we talked about. But I read through that article, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you read through it too because you sent it
Right.
to me. Did you see a shred of any evidence that they pointed out in that whole article?
So this is basically all it comes down to, okay? This one little small paragraph we have here, it says basically, purges of voter rolls in black communities. So you have voter ID and witness signature laws. These are terrible things, definitely huge suppression. Requirements on voter registration, like you have to have your address correct. Limitations on polling places, curtailed early voting, and disenfranchisement of people with felony convictions. Now, some of these things, I'm not completely against all these things, but my thing is, I feel like witness signature laws, I feel like that's a big one. When you're especially voting and sending it in through the mail, your signature should line up. I mean, if it doesn't, that's unfortunate, and hopefully they'll tell you in time. I do think voting is a bit bureaucratic. It should be a lot easier, especially if we can do some type of virtual method. I know I'd seen and heard some ideas of doing some type of QR code for virtual voting. That would probably be even more secure than going to the voting location, especially if it's in some type of encryption, like Bitcoin or something like that. But I don't disagree with a few of these things. Like voter IDs, witness signatures. Now, for limitations on polling places, there should be a crap ton of polling places. If you ask me, that's no issue. Early voting, that too. Why not let people go out and vote early? I mean, if we had a holiday where you had the day off to go vote, then that would probably be no issue. But early voting should be open to everyone. Um, People with convictions, I'm kind of mixed on that. I think felons should be able to vote. At the end of the day, they're still a citizen. Sure, they went and served their time. You know what I mean? Now, while you're in prison, should you be able to vote? Probably not. You're in prison. But once you get out, you already served your time. You're a citizen once again. So, what are your thoughts on those various items?
On one side, I understand why they don't allow felons to vote, because it's kind of like you did the ultimate crime, so you lose all of your what's it called, rights, right? Okay, which I don't agree with. If they didn't do something bad enough where you're letting them out of the prison when they're done, obviously what they did wasn't that bad, right? And we have a lot of white collar crime, right? Check theft, that kind of stuff. Does that, if somebody steals a check, right, when they're 18 years old, does that constitute something that they should lose their right to vote for the rest of their life? Honestly, I don't think so. And I think that's a conversation we need to have, right? On the other side of, like, let me deviate. Okay, so as far as like ID laws and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's say we don't have ID laws. What if I went out and got a whole bunch of illegals, or if I was a particular country and decided that I wanted to mess up some certain cities to get my own people in there, like Houston or Austin or Dallas, and I just went out and got 50 or 60,000 of my buddies, and we all went down to the polling places and cast our anonymous ballots into the bin, right? In that election meddling. So, all these laws are supposed to protect, and then the people will say, well, poor people don't have IDs. Well, let's get something straight. You can't get food stamps without an ID. You can't buy your liquor without ID. You can't buy your
I mean,
cigarettes without ID.
Yeah,
You
and I was gonna
can't
say, what
rent a
stops
house without
somebody?
ID.
What stops someone from going down to the polling place, knowing their neighbor's not going to vote, and then saying, "Hey, I'm that person," confirming their address, and then going to vote, and then guess what? Go to a different polling place later, or wait a couple weeks, and then go vote for yourself. That's two votes in.
Or what about if they're out there ballot harvesting and they just send all these in? Well, which one gets counted? The one that was cast via the ballot, or somebody who actually walked in and voted? Those are issues that, from my understanding, hasn't even been confirmed yet. Okay, so let's say you got a group that's out there printing fake ballots or whatever, right? Does the person counting the ballot have the time to go down with the microscope, and maybe they got some special ink on there or something, I don't know, that that they can verify that that's a legitimate ballot? And if it is legitimate, how do they know that somebody didn't go out there and ballot harvest 50,000 ballots Because if you can change a couple thousand ballots, and now you can switch who's the mayor of a mega city like New York, or I said Houston or LA. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of, they can get like crony capitalist stuff. That's a lot of stuff that they can sway at a local level. And it's like, well, what do you got to have to fix it? Well, ID and you show up to vote. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like, the cost, the societal cost, if that happens. And now here's the thing. They always say, well, illegal votes and voter, what's the word? I'm losing it today. Anyway, so like there's never any cases of it, right? Well, that's not true. They catch them all the time doing it. They just don't prosecute. Well, if they don't prosecute, as far as they're concerned, it never happened. But you have, issues like in the 2016 election where I think LA County had like 100,000 more ballots cast, and they actually had people who were eligible to vote. Who put those in? I mean, I want to know if it's true, but that's, we've always heard it's like, okay, well, if that happened, how did it happen? Does that make sense? And 100,000 ballots is a lot of ballots, and that can really swing some major. I mean, you could get, a new mayor, you can get new board, city council members with all those kind of ballots. You know what I'm saying? If somebody just goes in a straight party ticket, or maybe they're selecting their own candidates in there, 100,000 ballots is a lot of ballots, and we need to have to ask the question, okay, if 2,000 or 3,000 ballots is enough to swing an election, then we need to be darn careful of which ballots we're counting. That makes sense?
No, I completely agree. All right,
I would like to leave off with one last thing.
Go ahead.
One last thing. I believe it was the last of the presidents of the Soviet Union before they fell, right? I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Gorbachev.
Was the one before him. Anyway, so Stalin, it was Joseph Stalin, and I remember, said, I don't care who votes. I only care about who counts the votes. Allegedly, right? So maybe we're beating the wrong horse here. Just leaving that out there. Next topic.
All right, let's go on to the next one now. So this one's an article covering the basically the wildfire assistance that the Trump administration, or really the government, gives out whenever there's a disaster. So in this recent situation, there's been a lot of California wildfires this year. A lot of people don't know, but most of that's actually due to human activity. So not only that, but I've also heard a bit of calls for people to, or at least California, to start kind of managing better wildlife management, basically. For them to go out and clear out brush that's near the trees, and maybe that this would help prevent, some of these wildfires from getting like way out of control. I mean, it's unfortunate we saw so many wildfires this year in California, but there was a recent disaster in the Fresno, Los Angeles area, a couple cities that they named. Basically, the Trump administration had declined assistance for that. However, the administration has previously handed out money to them a few times before this. So, I mean, yeah, they declined the assistance this time, but they have also allowed assistance in the past. So I'm not really sure what the reason was. They don't name it in the article. But I thought the headline, of course, mainstream media, similar to the last article, I thought the headline was completely ridiculous. And once again, they just throw up there, Trump administration rejects disaster declaration for California wildfires, plural, as if we're talking about, wildfires for the entire year in California, when really, if you look into it, the article itself shows you, hey, it's just, one of the wildfires that occurred, they denied assistance for that, not the other wildfires, just this one. But we're going to go ahead and make the headline this really catchy headline, and hopefully you don't go and look and read into it. Kenny, did you feel the same way whenever you read this?
Okay, so let me say it this way. Okay, so I have some understanding of what's really going on in California, right? I mean, I got friends over there. Technically, I'm from California. There's a couple issues there. Yeah, don't tell
I didn't know this. When did you come to Texas?
You know what? I was like a month old, so I'm technically a transplant. I consider myself a Texan, so that's all that
Oh,
matters.
okay. But
Yeah.
I guess
Hey, it
what
makes me feel
area
better. I don't own any guns that are even legal in
what
California.
area were your parents living in, I guess?
Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, but I still have friends that are over there. You know, some of my traveling friends, right? Okay. So, there's a couple issues here. One, have you ever heard of something called economic terrorism?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, well, 30% of all fruits and vegetables that used to be grown in America come out of California, right? It would not surprise me if we had some of our friends, particularly from overseas, that were going in there and wiping some of that stuff out. And how easy is a Molotov cocktail in a few places? Now, the main issue that has been explained to me is what's really going on, and this is, I think, one reason the Trump administration has kind of refused the aid. Yes, the forest fires are caused by man. It's just not from the carbon dioxide coming out of your tailpipe that they would like to say, which is funny because if you go about 1,000 feet above Earth, I believe it's like a constant 32 degrees. It's always so. The further up you go, the colder it gets. It's only right here on the surface that there's any kind of micro changes, and it's another show, but most of that comes from the sun. But barring that, a lot of these forest fires, from my understanding from people who live there, they're actually caused by homeless camps. So it's people that are recently been evicted for whatever reason out of their home, or have willingly given up their home, are now living on the streets, and a lot of these cities are pushing them out of the city. And where are they going to go? A lot of them, they go to the forest. And a lot of these people have no idea how to handle a cooking fire, right? The cooking fire gets out of hand, and boom, you got a forest fire, right? So
I just I
on
just
one
figured
side,
I just figured it was like idiots that go out and they camp and they're like, going out there in the
no,
woods, walking around. I mean, this might be part of it, but going around and like lighting a match or like smoking a cigarette and then they throw it and they don't think like, oh, I can't really catch on fire that easily. Shit. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
a
So
portion of it is people that are psychologically disabled, right? They're either on medications or they're supposed to be on medications and they're not, and they go out there, and yeah, that happens where they're smoking their cigarette or their joint and they fall asleep, right? And it catches everything on fire. That is a portion of it. And like I said, the reason you don't ever hear about this is because if California had to admit that they got a bunch of homeless people living out in the woods, then they'd have to admit that they got a homeless problem. Does that make sense? And I don't know if you've traveled down LA, they got like 20 city blocks of nothing but homeless camps down certain streets, right? And when I used to travel in and out of there all the time, it was not uncommon to go around, like, have these really nice city blocks, and then you go maybe 1 or 2 blocks down the road, and underneath the overpass is 5 or 6 tents, right? And that would just dot LA and some of these other major cities all over the place. And they're kind of hidden, so you just don't really see them. But it's not uncommon to go, every couple blocks and have an enclave of homeless people. And like I said, a lot of the cities have been trying to get this cleaned up, so they push the people out, and the people having no place else to go, they go to the hills, they go into the forest, they carve out a couple of acres for themselves, and they set up these homeless camps. And like I said, a lot of these is what casualty stuff on fire. Because like I said, a lot of these people, they're new to being homeless. In the last 6 months or a year, they've lived in a house their whole life. Now they're homeless. They don't know what to do. They've never had to light a fire. They just know that if you put sticks together and you put a match underneath, it goes up. Well, they don't know how to keep it contained, and that gets out of hand for whatever reason, or they get high winds, will just gust through there, and it catches the rest of the forest on fire. And that's why I'm saying, California doesn't want to admit it, because then they have to admit they have a homeless problem. And that's what I would say is probably one of the main reasons that the Trump administration says, you know what, you put the homeless people out there. And I'm not saying the Trump administration is even admitting that. I'm just, I guess I'm putting words in his mouth, right? That, hey, look, you all caused the problem, and now you want us to fix it? Because I understand that a lot of the forest fires they're actually national forests. So technically that's BLM's job to fix that, right? And I understand there's some local laws that keep the BLM from doing certain things, but it is on a lot of, like I said, a lot of it's on national forest. But like I said, a lot of it because it's homeless people. They go out there, they don't know any better, and their cooking fires get out of hand. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's why
So
I think conversation's going.
I pulled up an article from LA Times. They have a bunch of like different statistics on wildfires. Like I said, most of it, I think it said their most destructive fires, where's it at? Basically, almost all of them were human started. Um, some were from lightning or like that was actually a really tiny portion. A lot of people, but once again, that actually goes to that wildlife management, right? Cleaning up the forest. So if a lightning bolt strikes a tree, it's not going to light everything on fire. And then also you have power line and electrical problems. That's great because California is trying to go more eco green friendly for their power supply, and then also stop producing gas vehicles and then move to electric vehicles. This feels like it's going to get worse. But a lot of it was just from people. Sparks from driving a trailer on the rim of a flat tire. Negligence again. Hunters' small signal fires. Arson. So yeah, but I guess we'll move on to our quiz now. So let's start that one up. Ready? All right, so I'm gonna have you start it out, Kenny, this time.
I got kind of a weird one for you today.
Okay, what do we got?
How large is your normal speed limit sign when you're traveling down the freeway?
On the freeway?
Yeah.
Oh, a
Because
speed
there's actually
limit
different
sign.
sizes.
Oof. Well, I'm guessing it also depends on which state that you're in, but I'm gonna
National.
go with these things. Like don't appear that big when you're driving, but I'm gonna say like 6 by 8 feet.
Kind of close. That would be the size of a jumbo sign. Your average one, the actual that's required by law, is actually 4 feet by 5 feet, 48 inches wide by 60 inches tall. Now, if you get a jumbo one, then they can get up to that size that you said, which it makes you think is like, wow, they look so tiny when you're traveling down the road. And we all see them every day, right? Now, you can get smaller ones for like, in your city, but as far as like, national code, I forget what it's called, for going down the highway, they all have to be a certain size. And I said, because if they're too small or too large, well, they technically can't give you a ticket if you violate it because they gave you a speed limit sign that was 6 inches by 6 inches. That's why they all have to be a certain size. I said the normal size when you're going down the road is approximately 48 inches wide by 60 inches tall if it's to national code. But like I said, you can get the jumbo ones that are a lot bigger. But you think about it, you got your yard sign. It's 11 by 12 or whatever a standard piece of paper is. They got it 100 feet off the road saying, hey, we got garage sale today. Yeah, nobody's going to see that. You might want to get a sheet of plywood.
All right, I'm gonna go for mine. So which state is a person more than six, or where a person is no more than 6 miles from water?
Oh, I would say Michigan.
You're correct, sir.
Okay.
You are correct. I think it's pretty easy because Michigan is surrounded by lakes. So
yeah, well, their motto is the land of 1,000 lakes. So
right there you go.
You got a real tiny state. It's not really tiny, but geographically wise, it's tiny, and you have a whole lot of surface. Now, this should be next week, but I'm going to give you a bonus one this week. Which state has the most amount of surface water?
Oh, surface water. I'm gonna go with Louisiana.
You're close. Geographically wise, it's actually Texas. Now, most of those are all man-made. So these other states, they're natural. But as far as surface, square miles of water surface, Texas has one of the highest in the country. It's all man-made, but like I said, we're such a big state that you don't realize just how much surface water we really have.
Yeah, I kind of figured the I don't know, Louisiana because of all the swamps, but I didn't think about man-made.
Yeah, but you don't think about it in Texas because but like I said, most of it's they're man-made lakes, and that's how we have acquired that many square feet of surface water.
Alrighty, all right. So let's go on to our next topic. All right, so go here, full screen it. Yeah, so this one's actually going to focus on Chinese suicide drones. Um, these things are pretty scary, but once you start to read into this article, you then realize once more the Chinese has stolen more technology. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but it looks pretty similar to us. But as you can see on the screen, obviously if you're on the podcast, you can't see it, but it's a military type truck. It almost looks like a multiple rocket launcher system. Basically, the back opens up and there's about, I don't know, probably like 40 tubes or something on the back. And the drone shoots out, or the drones shoot out of the back of it and are propelled into the air. And pretty scary looking, especially because they are a suicide type weapon. And then there's actually a video too, which shows the full use of these. They can actually be launched out of a helicopter also. But this is actually kind of piggybacked off one of our systems that's called the Locust. And these are actually launched from a trailer system. I'm not sure which military contractor we have that uses it, but it's the Navy. The Naval Research Group is the one using these Locusts, which stands for Low Cost UAV Swarming Technology. Yeah, but pretty interesting. What were your thoughts on this weapon system, Kenny?
Well, when we say low cost, are we talking, the low cost if you ask the regular 9 to 5 person, or are we talking low cost for the military? Because last I checked, a Katusha rocket was like $300. That's pretty darn cheap to me. You put about 50 or 60 of them out, and cover a pretty good area. So those look a little bit more than $200-300.
Yeah. No,
My
I
next thing
mean,
is,
I would say obviously, low cost military wise, but I'd probably say the cost is low in terms of other drone systems, if that makes sense, that we have.
my next question is why? I mean, we already got like the Reaper drone and the Predator drone and some of these
Well,
other ones.
right. So it was probably done. I'm assuming it was done actually in response to the Chinese, if I was to take a guess. Um, we know that they have these drone capabilities where they're basically out in a swarm method. Um, but yeah, that, but once again, I think it's the Chinese showing their strength and their firepower and really pushing their incursion out into the China Sea and into the Pacific and outreaching ever more. And I really feel like it's starting to get to be a matter of time where they're starting to do more overt operations and just start taking islands off the coast and, nations getting upset, not being able to respond well. Do you have something to say there?
Yeah, we need to have a conversation one of these days about how China's been getting all those good toys.
Oh,
But
yeah.
other than that, like I said, okay, I still don't understand the point. Okay, so I can't remember the Russians have a multiple missile launch system, right? Where it shoots like 40 or 50. They can hit a whole grid square, 1,000-kilometer grid square, and just wipe everything out, right? I bet you that thing's way cheaper. And if I need to call in for that much firepower, I'm not entirely sure I need a drone to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, well, we'll park this bad boy right here. We'll launch about 50 missiles and we'll call it good. And I understand those are probably a lot more accurate. But you take some of those systems where they can launch 40, 50 rockets, those can be smart rockets. They just put a little tail fin on the back and they can kind of steer those things as long as they get it in the general direction. I'm just like, I understand there's a point for those. I'm just not seeing where, the cost and complexity if one of those don't work, outweighing, I don't see the benefit to the cost ratio on those. You know what I'm saying?
So
I understand they can go up. I mean, a small drone's going to last up there an hour maybe, right? On conventional batteries.
yeah, if you look into like a lot of the recent military technology, a lot of it's really trying to go towards robots and AI. So that way we're taking humans out of the fight and it's really becoming more of a really like a machine war, I guess, Terminator style. But in the article, it states that these swarms are hard for opponents to defend against. They can become blind, confused, and then to overwhelm the enemy air defense. Yeah, so I think this would probably be really good for enemy air defenses because enemy air defenses only have so many weapons, and most of those weapons they have are pretty costly to use. So if they're trying to defend against, like an airplane that wants to come in, these drone swarming systems can come in, and those counter batteries are trying to go up, and guess what? They have to take out like 40 of these little tiny drones. If not, then one of those drones is going to get through and then blow up that air defense system, and then it can't even take out the main target, which is going to be that big jet that's going to come in with a big bomb and drop it on them. So I think that's probably
Yeah.
what the intent is here.
Or I could take one of those multiple launch systems and with the smart telephone on the back that costs a couple $100 and drop about 50 in the target area and wipe everything out and for pennies on the dollar. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying is like,
Oh no, yeah.
I understand where these it seems really limited for what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's other ways they could do it and save a ton of cash.
No,
You know
I
what I'm
got you.
saying?
That reminds me of some of the jihadist groups in the Middle East. Like they are literally like that. The militia groups they're literally taking these small commercial systems you can buy on like Amazon or something, and then getting a grenade and somehow attaching it, and then coming over, and then just a grenade drops on you. I mean, it works effectively. Can it be seen on radar? Probably not. And guess what? It's really tiny.
It's effective on that scale. You don't
Right.
see them getting 50 of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's not just 50 drones. It's 50 drones that are having to network together, which also leaves it open to hacking. You know what I'm saying? And then there was a article a few years ago where I believe it was Iran brought down one of they hacked it and brought it down into their own base.
Yeah.
I see it open versus like if I keep saying the Katyusha rocket because I don't know the American equivalent of it, right? It's a dumb rocket, right? I'm like, what are you gonna do? It's like it doesn't have a radio receiver in it. Just you'll send it up in the general direction, hit your grid square, and if you got a smart one that's GPS guided, the only thing you can do is basically hack the GPS. But even if you do, it's not gonna swerve too far left or right for when it hits target. You just got to get in the general area. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's like in a microcosm, like where you have a few local militias, a drone makes sense. I'm just not seeing the battlefield benefit of 90 of them. That makes sense. That couldn't be accomplished by another weapon system we already got.
Well, I'll say
it seems funky.
We're not generals, so I would say
I'm not in the military,
there's probably a good reason out there. I don't know. I'm sure they have all the plans going and know what's going on with that. But yeah, so that's our last article. Gonna catch us. We're gonna be recording on this upcoming weekend, and hopefully we'll release it. It's with our guest speaker coming on. And I think that's all I have. Kenny, you have anything else extra to add?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well,
Like, comment,
guys.
subscribe.